Hello there. It's a time for another lesson in biology. This time we'll be looking at the first part of this lesson, which is relevance of biology to agriculture 1. Now the objective of this lesson is to describe how biology has been able to help in improving livestock and crop varieties, describe how biology has helped in food preservation and storage, and finally to classify plants based on life cycle and uses. Moving along, what is the relevance of biology to agriculture? Biology is relevant to agriculture because biological knowledge is applied in improving agriculture in many ways, such as improving livestock and crop variety, food storage, and preservation. Now we're going to look first at improving livestock and crop varieties, how biology has helped in that. Now this can be achieved through crossbreeding and genetic engineering. Now crossbreeding is the process of breeding with the intention to create offspring that share the traits of both parents to produce an animal or plant with hybrid vigor. That is to improve or increase function of any biological quality in a hybrid offspring. Now crossbreeding is a process that has been practiced for a long time, even before advancements in science and technology came to being. Farmers, especially plant farmers and livestock rearers, they've all used this crossbreeding process. Now it involves picking two members of a species, and you cross them together. One may have not one species have or breed or type has all the traits that is required that the farmer wants to see even in a particular crop or livestock. So what they do is that they pick one that has a particular desirable trait and another breed that has another desirable trait. So they breed them together, they crossbreed them together so that they can have a hybrid which has both qualities from both parents involved. So that is that about crossbreeding. Now another way is genetic engineering, also called genetic modification. In genetic modification, this involves the transfer of desired genes from one organism to another. Now this process of genetic modification aids in the creation of new foods by introducing the desired gene into the body, resulting in faster growth. Now in genetic modification, this is an applied science or applied genetics in which the gene that codes for a particular trait has been identified and is isolated. Now once this gene is isolated, then this gene is put into the body or put into the gene the chromosome of another particular cell, and this particular gene, this trait, will begin to express itself in another living organism. This will be expressed in another living organism. This is just the short form or short explanation that I can give on genetic modification. Now these are examples of crossbreeding in plants and animals. Now you can see two different breeds of the same species, Astrophytum asterias and Astrophytum coahuilense. Now when they are crossbred together, it gives an Astrophytum hybrid, you see, which will have the traits from this particular one and this one, the trait together in one particular breed of organism. Now it also happens in animals as well. Now for instance, you pick a female horse and a male donkey. Once you crossbreed them, they come up with a particular hybrid called the male. So you can see that crossbreeding occurs both in plants and animals, and it has been done for generations. Now moving along, this is genetic engineering or modification. This picture shows genetic engineering or genetic modification. Now, a chromosome has been identified that has the gene that codes for a particular trait. Once this gene is located and it is isolated, now this gene is attached to a host or a vector right here. So a particular part of the chromosome of the particular vector will be removed, while this desired fragment of gene will be implanted into it. So now this is the vector or the host. This is what the vector or the host chromosome or gene will look like, and this particular gene will be expressed as part of the character of the host or the vector. So this is a diagrammatic explanation for genetic engineering or modification. Now, moving along, why do we want to improve livestock and crop varieties? Why do we want to do that? Why do we want to use genetic engineering and crossbreeding to improve livestock and crop varieties? Now, these are the aims. These are the reasons. Number one, to produce pest and disease resistant varieties. Number two, to obtain crops and livestock that mature early. 3, to obtain crops and animals that produce higher yield. 4, to obtain hybrid vigor in which most of the desirable traits in both parents are in one individual. 5, to obtain a pure breed for a particular desired trait. And finally, to obtain crops with improved flavor or quality. Now, moving along, we'll be looking at the classification of plants. Now, plants can be classified in 3 different ways: in botanical classification, agricultural classification, and classification based on life cycle. Now, first and foremost, we are going to look at the botanical classification. Now, this is the botanical classification of plants, where plants can be classified into non-flowering and flowering plants. And non-flowering plants, some have no roots, while some are with roots. The ones with no roots, an example are mosses, while the ones with roots are ferns. Now, the flowering plants can be classified into 2: one that has naked seeds, and the one that has their seeds within the fruits of the plant itself. We have the gymnosperms, which contains naked seeds, and the angiosperms, which have their seeds concealed inside the fruits. And we have 2 other classifications of angiosperm. We have the monocots and the dicots. The monocots have 1 seed leaf, while the dicot plants have 2 seed leaves. Now, this is the brief botanical classification of plants. Moving along, we are going to be looking at classification based on life cycles. And we have 3 types. We have annuals, the biennials, and the perennials. Now, the annuals are crops which complete their life cycle in 1 season. That is, they germinate, develop, mature, produce seeds, and die within a season. Examples are rice, millet, maize, groundnut. Biennials are plants which complete their life cycles within 2 years. During the first year, they develop their vegetative parts, store food, or produce fruits, and die during the second year. Examples are onions, carrots, and ginger. Perennials are plants that live for several years. In other words, they produce fruits every season, and some twice in a season or once in several seasons. Examples are oranges, banana, oil palm, and mango plants. Moving along, we'll be looking finally at the agricultural classification of plants. We have different plants based on their uses. For instance, the cereal plants, also called grain crops, are cultivated for their seeds. Legumes or pulses are cultivated for their fruits and seeds, which are rich in protein. Root crops are grown primarily for food stored in their swollen roots. Tuber crops are underground stems swollen with food reserve. Now, we have also vegetable crops. These are planted or cultivated for their root stems and leaves, which are useful as food. We have the spices, which are plants that add special flavor to food. Oil plants are crops grown mainly for the oil that could be extracted from their fruits and seeds. Fiber crops are crops or plants used for making clothing material, ropes, and bags. Forage crops are grown mainly to feed animals. Rubber or latex crops are crops which produce latex used in plastic and rubber industries. Fruit crops are cultivated for their fruits that are edible. Now this has brought us to the end of our lesson for today. I'm going to look quickly at the summary. Biology is relevant to agriculture because biological knowledge is applied in improving agriculture in many ways, such as improving livestock and crop variety, food storage, and preservation. Improvement of crops and livestock can be achieved through crossbreeding and genetic engineering. Plants can be classified in 3 different ways. These are botanical classification, agricultural classification, and classification based on life cycle. Now, before we go, I want you to pause this video and attempt to answer the question in this assessment section of our lesson to see how much of the lesson that you have imbibed, and I will see you again in the next lesson.